Hello everyone, I'm Justin, and this is a full recap of Beetlejuice, released in 1988. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. After a successful directorial debut with Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985, Tim Burton next chose to turn his focus onto another, even stranger project titled Beetlejuice, which proved to be yet another success, ranking as the 14th highest grossing film at the worldwide box office in 1988, and bringing in $75 million on a budget of $15 million. Over the course of the subsequent 30-plus years, Beetlejuice impressively managed to maintain its popularity, with the film being quickly followed up by an animated TV series that ran from 1989 to 1991, while later being transformed into a musical that opened in 2018. But although there was notable demand for a sequel, for one reason or another, it just never came to pass. Or at least it was until now, as on September 6th, the long-awaited follow-up will finally be released titled Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, in which we'll see the returns of Michael Keaton, who will once again be portraying the titular character in what will be his 5th Tim Burton project, Winona Ryder as a now-adult Lydia Deetz in her 4th Burton film, and Catherine O'Hara as Delia Deetz in her 3rd Burton film. So, before the new movie, we've decided to take a look back at the original Beetlejuice and run down everything that took place. The movie opens on the home of Barbara and Adam Maitland as the couple are enjoying their staycation, although that's soon interrupted by their realtor, who had originally sold them their home, Jane Butterfield, who's been attempting to sway them into selling their house for quite a while, feeling it's too big for just a couple. But they once again turn her down. Shortly following her exit, the two make a quick trip into town to their hardware store, so Adam can grab some supplies for his giant model of their small town. But as they make their way back home, they're suddenly forced to swerve off the road to avoid hitting a dog, in turn causing them to crash off the bridge and into the water below. Strangely, the two appear to have still made it home, although without any knowledge of how. So Adam heads out to retrace his steps, but instead finds himself on a strange desert planet where he's nearly attacked by a giant sandworm until Barbara pulls him back inside. Before the two then discover a handbook for the recently deceased within their home, bringing them to the realization that they hadn't actually survived their crash and are now ghosts. Unfortunately, the two don't get much time to settle into their new lives, as time appears to pass quicker when you're dead, and soon enough, Jane manages to resell the house to the Deets family, made up of Father Charles, who's also a real estate agent, stepmother Delia, and daughter Lydia, who considers herself to be strange and unusual. And they, per Delia's demands, end up completely remodeling the home with help from an interior designer named Otho. Barbara and Adam do try to prevent this though, by attempting to scare the family out of the house, but they fail pretty miserably since the Deets aren't able to actually see them, and so they're instead forced to live in the attic. During the reconstruction process, however, as Lydia's taking photos of the destruction, she vaguely sees Barbara and Adam peering out the attic window, prompting her to try and unlock the attic door to see if anyone's actually in there. But Adam manages to keep her out, while his and Barbara's attention is also shifted to the TV, as a commercial is suddenly broadcasted advertising the services of the afterlife's leading bioexorcist, Beetlejuice, who specializes in scares and possessions, and whose services Barbara and Adam briefly consider calling on, before they instead decide to take another look through the recently deceased handbook for help. In it, they discover how to create an emergency doorway, which soon leads them to a waiting room, where they wait beside others who've passed on until their number is called and are taken to meet their caseworker, Juno, who scoffs at their previous attempts to scare the Deetses out of their home and urges them to just study the handbook. The Maitlands also take this opportunity to ask what she knows about this Beetlejuice guy.
Don't even say his name.
And she strongly suggests against seeking out his help, describing him as a troublemaker who doesn't play well with others. So they again try to scare the Deetses out themselves, this time wandering around covered in bedsheets and making spooky noises. But this attempt also fails to scare anyone, although the noises do work in annoying Lydia, who comes out of her room to see what all the fuss is about and discovers the two ghosts, who, unlike everyone else, she's actually able to see. Lydia and the Maitlands quickly take a liking to one another, and so she agrees to try and help them get her parents to move out. But even after telling her stepmother about the two ghosts living in the attic, Delia displays no fear of or belief in what she's saying. So Adam and Barbara, seeing no other way to scare them away, finally decide to call on Beetlejuice, who, as they learned earlier, they're able to summon by saying his name 3 times. So Barbara does just that, suddenly transporting them into Adam's model of their town, where Beetlejuice seems to have made himself at home. But after spending just a couple of minutes in his presence, they quickly begin to regret their decision, finding him disturbing and frightening.
Save that guy for later.
And so Barbara shouts home 3 times to get them out of there. Fortunately, Barbara manages to think up her own idea of how to scare the Deetzes, which we see play out during the family's dinner party with Otho and a few of their colleagues, as the two manage to figure out a way to possess each of those in attendance and make them perform the Banana Boat song by Harry Belafonte before attacking them with their shrimp dishes. But frustratingly, the Deetzes and their guests consider this whole experience amusing, even sending Lydia to fetch the ghosts with the intention of possibly using their services again in the future. But they refuse to come down, prompting everyone to just barge into the attic themselves, only to be informed by Lydia that the ghosts have left. Her parents, and Otho are then suddenly frightened by Beetlejuice in a snake-like form, who sends Delia running and tosses Otho and Charles around, before turning his attention to Lydia, who he's fortunately prevented from harming by Barbara, who once again says his name 3 times to get rid of him. This experience, though, deeply upsets Lydia, who'd grown to trust the Maitlands, but now, with that trust broken, and without any real connection to her own family, she begins to wish she was dead herself. Immediately following their decision to unleash Beetlejuice onto the Deetzes, Barbara and Adam are once again called to meet with Juno, who berates them for their actions and demands they get the Deetzes out of their house as soon as possible, to avoid things getting any worse. However, things nearly get worse while they're gone, as Lydia soon encounters Beetlejuice.
Are you a ghost too?
I'm the ghost with the most, babe.
Who attempts to gain her trust and manipulate her into saying his name 3 times. But she fortunately recognizes him as the snake that had frightened her previously, and so refuses. Shortly thereafter, Adam and Barbara return and make amends with Lydia, as well as help her see that death won't make what she's going through any easier. And to cheer her up, they decide to let her and her family live together with them in their home. Her parents continue to make this decision appear questionable though, as they've invited yet another guest to their home, Chairman of Botco Industries, Maxie Dean, in hopes of convincing him to finance their plan of buying every building in their small town to turn it into a supernatural tourist attraction, with their main selling point being Barbara and Adam, who Otho has discovered a way to get out of hiding within the handbook for the recently deceased he'd stumbled upon earlier. For this, he needs a pair of the couple's personal items, and Delia manages to find their wedding attires. So, using these clothes, Otho's able to perform a seance that ultimately forces the Maitlands to appear before the group, although they now find themselves unable to speak, in addition to slowly beginning to revert to their decaying corpses, frightening Charles, who asks Otho to put a stop to this, but he doesn't know how. So, seeing no other way to save them, Lydia rushes over to the model and asks Beetlejuice for help. But he only agrees to do it if Lydia agrees to marry him, since if he wants to get out of the afterlife for good, he has to marry a living being. And Lydia, with Barbara and Adam continuing to decay, agrees to his deal.
It's showtime.
Upon being brought back to the land of the living, Beetlejuice immediately sends Maxie Dean and his wife flying out of the home, sends Otho running scared, and puts the Maitlands at ease, allowing him to then move ahead with his and Lydia's wedding ceremony, for which he also holds her parents hostage as witnesses. But despite managing to thwart Lydia, Adam, and Barbara's multiple attempts at repeating his name, with him even transporting the latter to the strange sandworm planet, his plan ultimately ends in failure when Barbara comes crashing through the roof, riding in on a sandworm that completely devours him. Sometime later, we see as Lydia makes her way home from school and is greeted by the Maitlands, who are now finally happily living alongside her and her family, and who she greets with good news, as Lydia had managed to get an A on her math test, which they celebrate with a performance of Harry Belafonte's Jump in the Line. While back in the afterlife, Beetlejuice has been left waiting on his number to be called in the waiting room as the movie ends. And that was our recap of Beetlejuice. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also, be sure to let us know in the comments below how excited you are for the new Beetlejuice film releasing next month, as well as where you'd rank the original Beetlejuice among other classic horror comedies. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.